Okay, so are you ready to like dive deep into this book? We are tackling Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind.
Oh, yeah.
This book, it's wild.
It's a big one.
It's not just like history, you know? It's like a deep dive on what makes us human. From like the Stone Age all the way to like...
The smartphone age.
It makes you rethink like everything. You know what I mean?
The way
to think about like what you thought you knew about like being human about our species.
Yeah.
He doesn't just like
Yeah.
give you a bunch of facts. He like weaves a narrative.
Yeah.
It's like a detective story. You're like, what?
It's so good.
It makes you question like civilization.
It's true. And like he starts off with a bang. He's like,
Yeah.
our dominance as like a species isn't just because we have big brain.
Right, which is what like everyone thinks.
Yeah.
Which you think. You're like, oh yeah, we're smart.
It's like, oh, we're the smartest, so we won.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
It's our ability
Yeah.
to believe in stories.
Yeah.
In things that don't physically exist.
Yeah, like things you can't
Yeah.
touch.
It's wild.
And that's what makes us different from other animals.
Totally.
Like, think about it. Nations, laws, money.
Yeah.
You can't touch them.
They're just ideas.
But they have immense power because we just collectively decide to believe in them.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
It's so true. It's like,
Peugeot.
it's not just a car.
Yeah.
It's a story we tell ourselves
Yeah.
about French engineering
Yeah.
and like a certain je ne sais quoi.
Right.
And we buy into these stories, and that's what makes them real.
Exactly. And that ability to like unite strangers
Yeah.
around an idea, around a shared belief, whether it's a logo, a brand, a story. That is the superpower that took us from small hunter-gatherer bands
Right.
to cities, empires, global corporations.
It's wild.
Like, we're hardwired for this.
Okay.
And it's been playing out for like millennia.
Yeah, and this whole idea of shared myths makes you think about
Yeah.
how we view the past. Like hunter-gatherers. Have you ever heard like the noble savage thing?
Oh, yeah.
Like living in harmony?
The Garden of Eden.
Yes. Peace, love, and lentil soup.
Yeah, it's a tempting vision.
Yeah.
But Harari kind of injects a dose of reality.
Yeah.
He says, well, evidence of warfare is like tricky to find. Anthropological studies of like more recent hunter-gatherers show that conflict was not uncommon.
Yeah, so they were just like braiding each other's hair
Yeah.
and like singing Kumbaya.
Exactly.
Right.
Which brings us to...
It wasn't always a paradise. No. Another fascinating and slightly unsettling topic, those extinct giants. You know,
Yeah.
the megafauna that roamed places like Australia thousands of years ago.
Right.
Did you know? We might have played a role in their demise.
It's a sobering example of the impact humans have had on the planet.
Yeah.
Even way back then.
So long ago.
We become this like keystone species.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
For better or for worse.
There are a few theories about this.
Okay.
Some researchers point to overhunting as like the main culprit,
Okay.
while others emphasize the effects of fire stick farming.
What is that?
So that's basically intentionally burning to manipulate the environment for hunting.
Yeah.
Imagine that the skill and coordination to like reshape the landscape.
That's amazing. It's like a prehistoric detective story. Was it just us?
Yeah.
Or was it more complicated?
Was it climate change too?
Yeah.
Did we weaken the ecosystem and then we showed up and delivered the final blow?
It's hard to say.
It is. There's no smoking gun.
No.
But it does make you think,
Right.
like, how much of our impact is intentional
Right.
and how much is just a byproduct of us existing.
It's a great question.
It's a question we're still asking today.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Okay, let's fast forward a bit. From prehistoric mysteries to the rise of empires. Harari dives deep into this idea of money, another one of those shared fictions
Yes.
that totally changed everything. Like, how did we go from bartering goats to, like, digital currencies?
It's kind of amazing when you think about it.
Yeah.
It all boils down to trust.
Really?
Like, money only works because we all agree that those shells are coins, or like ones and zeros in a database, actually have value.
It's strange.
It's a shared illusion
Wow.
that underpins the entire global economy.
It's really incredible when you think about, like, how money has evolved. Like, Harari talks about how
Yeah.
early forms of money, like barley,
Right.
actually had inherent value. Like, you could eat it if times got tough.
Can you imagine trying to buy a house today? With a truckload of barley.
That's so funny. It's true, though.
No?
You'd need like a convoy.
The logistics would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
That's why credit was such a game changer.
Oh, my gosh. Credit is like, hey, you don't need a mountain of barley to be rich. Just have this piece of paper that says you're good for it.
It says you're good for it. And suddenly, the possibilities exploded for, like, economic growth.
Yeah.
And complexity. Totally. It was like unlocking a secret level of civilization.
That's a great way to put it.
Cool.
But empires weren't just built on money. They needed something more.
Of course.
They needed something to unite their citizens under a common banner.
Right.
And that's where those shared stories come back in.
Exactly.
Like a 1-2 punch. Conquer with military might. But then you have to win hearts and minds with these grand narratives.
Right. You conquer with the sword.
Yeah.
But you rule with the story.
You rule with the story. About religion, shared destiny, divine right of kings.
Exactly.
Like all that stuff.
Empires were masters at crafting these unifying stories. They spread their values and beliefs through trade, conquest, cultural exchange.
It's really interesting.
Think about the Roman Empire with its emphasis on law and order, glory of Rome, or the spread of Buddhism under Ashoka the Great, who used the power of compassion and nonviolence to unite a vast empire.
That's incredible.
I know.
These stories have staying power.
They do.
So much of history is like, hey, the stories we tell ourselves and the power those stories have
I know.
to shape our world.
It's true.
And speaking of powerful stories, let's talk about the Industrial Revolution, this period of explosive technological advancement that makes even empires look slow.
Right.
What's so fascinating about the Industrial Revolution is how it totally reframed our relationship with energy.
Completely.
It's not about human or animal power anymore.
Right. We're tapping into the forces of nature.
We are.
Coal, steam, eventually oil, electricity to fuel our ambitions.
And that's where a lot of anxiety comes from.
It's true.
Like as humans today, we worry about running out of energy, hitting peak oil, a resource crisis, all of that.
But Harari
has a different perspective.
He does. He says the real limit isn't about the amount of energy.
Oh, okay.
It's about our ingenuity in figuring out how to, like, harness it.
Okay.
Like, from steam engines and coal to nuclear power plants, unlocking the power of atoms. We keep figuring out new ways to power our world.
That's where we're constantly breaking through our limitations.
We are.
Which is exciting and terrifying because it's like, okay, we can do all this stuff.
Right.
But are we biting off more than we can chew?
What are the unintended consequences?
What are the unintended consequences?
Of all this progress.
Of all this progress.
And that brings us to one of the most, like, mind-blowing parts of Sapiens, which is the future of humanity. He doesn't just look back. He looks at the abyss of possibilities.
I like that.
And it gets really wild.
Okay.
So basically, he argues that...
What does he argue?
Natural selection, the force that shaped life on Earth for billions of years, is being replaced by something else. Intelligent design. And we're the designers.
Oh, my God.
We're engineering life in labs. We're messing with genes. We're creating new organisms. How long until we apply these tools to ourselves to upgrade Homo sapiens?
To upgrade ourselves?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like we're going from science fiction to the brink of reality.
That's scary. It's kind of like we're holding the reins of evolution, like steering it in directions. It would have never gone on its own.
Right.
But if we're the ones in the driver's seat now, where are we going?
That's the question. Right. Harari talks about a few different paths we might take. One is biological engineering.
Okay.
Like, imagine eliminating genetic diseases.
Wow.
Enhancing our intelligence.
Okay.
Maybe even slowing down aging.
You can live forever.
Right.
That's wild.
It's a tempting path, but it's also fraught with ethical dilemmas.
Of course.
Right? Like, who gets access to these enhancements? Do we risk creating a world of, like, superhumans and then just regular humans?
Oh, my gosh. It's like Gattaca. That's scary.
It's a scary thought.
Okay. And then there's, like, the cyborg route.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, like, always super interesting to me.
Of course.
Think about it. Brain-computer interfaces where we can connect our minds to the internet.
Right.
Prosthetic limbs.
Wow.
That are like, better than our actual limbs,
Yeah.
even like nanobots in our blood, repairing damage.
It's wild.
It sounds like a movie,
It does.
but it's like closer than we think.
It is. It makes you think about, like, oh, what does it even mean to be human?
Right.
Like, are we our bodies? Are we our minds? Are we some combination of flesh and technology? And if we can just enhance ourselves with technology, like, where's the line?
Where do you draw the line?
Exactly.
So
These are questions that are becoming more and more relevant in our world.
It's like we're stepping into the future. That we used to only read about.
I know.
It's exhilarating and terrifying.
It's both.
Yeah. But Harari doesn't stop there.
He doesn't.
He takes us even further.
Down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
He says, what about creating entirely inorganic life forms?
Right.
Artificial intelligence that
Right.
could be
Yeah.
smarter than us in ways we can't even imagine.
Okay.
Like, imagine machines that can not only think,
Yeah.
but feel, create,
Mhm.
and maybe even achieve consciousness.
Okay, now that's both mind-blowing and scary.
It is a little bit.
Because it makes you wonder, if we do create these beings, will they be our partners in this grand cosmic journey? Or will they view us as like
Slut.
inefficient predecessors?
But
and, like,
we don't have the best track record with sharing the planet. That's true. Not at all.
so it makes you nervous.
It does. It's like the ultimate question of coexistence.
Total.
Can we exist with artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
Or are we destined for
Yeah.
some kind of conflict?
Right.
A battle for, like, dominance
Oh, God.
in this digital age.
It's heavy.
It is.
Okay. Before we spiral too far into these, like, mind-bending possibilities, let's rewind back to history. One of the things I thought was so interesting about Sapiens was how Harari reframes these moments in history,
Yeah.
like the agricultural revolution, the rise of monotheism, as choices, not inevitabilities.
That's huge.
It's like maybe history didn't have to be this way.
Exactly. We tend to view history as this straight line, this, like, inevitable march to get to us,
To where we are.
to the present.
Yeah.
But Harari's like, what if it wasn't? What if those early farmers didn't decide to settle down and grow crops?
Yeah.
What if the first empires didn't figure out how to use money and these shared myths?
Sure.
Would the world be completely different?
It makes you wonder, like, what would those alternative realities even look like?
Right.
Like, what if we never...
What if we were all still hunter-gatherers,
Yeah.
just roaming around?
Would we have even developed language the same way?
Right.
Would we?
It's crazy.
It's wild.
And it reminds us that the future isn't set.
Totally.
We still have choices.
We have agency,
We do.
which is kind of empowering
It is.
in a way. Okay, speaking of choices, I thought his whole thing on monotheism was really interesting.
Ugh.
Because it's like, obviously a dominant belief system
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
but he's saying that, like, that wasn't always the case. You had polytheism, animism, ancestor worship, all these different belief systems before the one God idea.
Right. And it's amazing how he traces that evolution of belief. Like, he argues that monotheism came from these earlier, more diverse traditions. Like,
Correct.
he even says that. Even within monotheism, you see these traces of older beliefs,
Like what?
like angels and demons.
Okay.
Echoes that dualistic worldview. You find that in a lot of ancient religions.
Looks like we never really abandoned the old stories. We just like add new chapters,
New interpretation.
new interpretation,
Exactly.
new layers, all layers.
Harari doesn't shy away from the potential downsides
Oh,
of
yeah.
monotheism, right? Like,
Yeah,
he's
he points out that it can promote compassion
okay,
and moral guidance.
but it can also lead to intolerance
Yeah.
and conflict,
Yeah.
because if you think your God is the one true God, it's easy to see other beliefs as not just different,
Right.
but dangerous,
Yeah.
even heretical.
It's true. It's like that whole idea of like one true way,
Exactly.
which is like never good.
It's rarely good.
It's a good point.
It's this reminder that even well-intentioned beliefs can
Totally.
have unintended consequences,
Totally.
especially when you mix them with power, politics,
Right.
social control.
Of course. It makes you wonder if we could reset history knowing what we know now,
Yeah.
would we make the same choices?
Right. Would we do things differently?
Would we do things differently?
And that's a question that goes beyond just monotheism.
Right.
It applies to all our big ideas, political ideologies, economic systems, our ideas about progress, technology.
Right.
Like, are we doing the best we can?
Yeah.
Or are we just making it up as we go along?
It's scary.
It is a little bit.
It really makes you think, like, for all our progress, are we really any closer to answering those big questions? Like, who are we? Where are we going?
Yeah, that's fundamental questions.
What's the point of all of this? You know?
They only get more and more urgent
Totally.
as we enter this, like, new era
That's a
of
lot.
technology, this age of, like, intelligent design.
Right, where we're, like, kind of shaping our own evolution.
Where we can reshape life.
It's kind of scary.
It is both exciting and daunting,
Yeah.
I think.
Harari talks about how we're already on this path of merging with technology in ways that would seem crazy, like a few decades ago.
Oh, yeah.
Brain-computer interfaces,
Totally.
genetic enhancements, maybe even uploading our consciousness into, like, digital avatars.
It's wild. It's like the future is unfolding in front of us.
It's so weird and exciting. But
It comes with challenges.
of course,
Right.
like with any big change.
Like, if we can enhance ourselves,
Yep.
will everyone have that ability,
Is the point.
or will it just make inequality worse?
Right, because like the people at the top could enhance themselves. And then what happens to everyone else?
What does it even mean to be human then?
Oh.
If we can just augment ourselves.
Or create new life. Like
We can't-
completely new.
What is that?
It's wild. Almost like we're playing with forces we don't fully understand.
Yeah. It's like, wow.
It's an old story.
Like that story about the apprentice who finds their master's spell book
Exactly.
and just starts messing with stuff
And unleashes something powerful.
and doesn't know how to control it.
Right.
And it's like, are we those apprentices
It's a good question.
with all of our technology?
I think Harari's book, it doesn't really give us the answers.
Which is kind of refreshing.
Right. It's more of a
Oh,
wake-up call.
okay.
You know, it makes you think critically about the future
Yeah.
and the choices. We're
Well, I
making
think that-
every invention,
Yeah.
every scientific breakthrough,
Yeah.
every line of code. It's shaping the future.
It's true. Like, we are writing our own spell book.
Exactly.
They're the ones.
We're not just passive bystanders. No, we're creating this.
Right.
He says we need to be more aware of the stories we're telling ourselves
Oh, yeah.
about progress, about
yeah.
technology, about what it means to be human.
Because those stories,
Yeah.
they shape our reality.
They really do.
And it's not just about the stories.
Okay.
It's about who gets to tell them.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Right.
Like, who is writing the narrative?
Exactly. Is it just tech
Yeah.
elites, governments,
Yeah.
corporations?
Right.
Or do we find a way to democratize this
Yeah.
so that everyone has a say?
Yeah, everyone gets a voice.
Exactly.
It's a good point. These are big questions. And it feels like we need to start, like, asking them now
We do.
before it's too late
Before we go too far.
to steer things
Yeah.
in a different direction.
Exactly.
Towards a future that, like, benefits everyone,
Right,
not
yeah.
just a select few.
That's the hope.
That's the dream.
It is the good dream.
Sapiens is such a good book
It's such a good book.
because it's not just history. It's like
Yeah.
a guidebook
Yeah.
for the
It's
future.
navigating all of this.
It reminds us that we have agency.
Yes.
We're not just along for the
We
romp.
have choice.
We
Yeah,
do
and have the power to shape the future.
to tell our own stories.
Yes, exactly.
I love that. As we kind of wrap up our deep dive here on Sapiens, I'm curious if you could go back in time
Yeah.
and give our hunter-gatherer ancestors one piece of advice,
Okay.
knowing everything
Yay.
that we know about the future. What would you tell them?
That is such a good question.
It's a tough one.
It is. It's tempting to say, choose peace, focus on sustainability, all
The big ones.
right. But I think maybe the best advice would be never stop questioning, never stop exploring, and never stop telling stories,
Telling stories?
because it's in those stories
Yeah.
that we discover what it really means to be human.
I love that. And on that note,
Yeah.
we'll leave you to ponder that. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Dive deep.